You ever wake up on a Saturday morning and think, I need to clean the house or the garage or whatever? And then you start thinking about everything that's going to go into that and then everything else that you have to do too. And you can't get enough information into your brain at that time because you're so overwhelmed. If you have ADHD, this has probably happened to you within the last week. Shoot, could have happened this morning or 10 minutes ago. What ends up happening, though, is it leads to this thing called ADHD paralysis, which I'm not sure if that's a technical term for it or not, but we all know what we're talking about when we talk about it. So, ADHD paralysis is when you find yourself sitting on the couch rather than doing the tasks that you need to do because you can't decide what to do first, and you sit on the couch for 4 hours scrolling through TikTok. Yes, 4 hours. You forgot to go to the bathroom. This is something that happens to a lot of people with ADHD. ADHD people approach tasks in a different way than neurotypical people do. Neurotypical people will look at a task and automatically break it down for the most part. Now, I'm not going to say every neurotypical person is capable of doing this, but they face this differently. ADHD people, when they face it as one thing. I can't get part of it done. I can't get a start on it. This is the whole thing. And if I don't get the whole thing done, I didn't do it. And I'm not saying don't do the whole thing, but break it down into little bits and pieces. So I have a suggestion for you. This works for a lot of people with ADHD. They take this big task, the house, which, in my opinion, cleaning the house in a day for a person with ADHD it's insurmountable sometimes. It's not a couple hours. It's a process. So I would not recommend it. Costume change. I had to do the second half of this video on a different day. I hope it doesn't mess with you too much. So here's what I'm suggesting for you to try. Because it's like a strategy of any kind, you try it. If it works, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. What I suggest is that you look at your task, so the house that we were talking about, and you break that task down. Right now, we're still in the neurotypical zone because they do the same thing. They break that down and that helps them. And then, so you might break it down into rooms. That's still going to be probably a little bit too big, right? Probably a lot of it too big, to be honest with you. So you're going to break it down even more. Some people might even break it down into sections of rooms, especially like if you have a corner of a room that is just always out of control. So I'm going to say the kitchen to use an example. So you go, what I want you to do is I want you to get a writing utensil and a piece of paper. Yeah. So yes, you're going to have to actually write it down. It's a little work intensive at first, but it'll be worth it in the end. So yeah, write it. Okay. So you write the list down, and we're still in neurotypical zone because you're just writing down a list of tasks that you have to do to complete the kitchen, right? For most neurotypical people, that's enough. They can stop there. They can do the steps and be fine with it. I suggest that a lot of us will look at that list and we will say, that's just a huge list of tasks that I have to get done. And that's even bigger to me. And now, even though I know everything I need to get done, this isn't doable. So now you get to play with the list. You've got your list of tasks. And I want you to gauge your tasks based on not how much time they take, but how much mental energy does it take? How difficult is it for you, particularly, to do these tasks? So I personally hate cleaning out the sink. I have a little OCD thing going on, and so getting into the sink and cleaning the sink is not my favorite thing. So that would probably be a higher level task for me because it takes so much effort to get it done. But for me, loading the dishwasher, that's easy. It's not a big deal. So that would probably go lower. So what I would suggest is you go through your list and you think about how much mental energy does it take you to get yourself to do that task. And then I want you to number it. One being, it's pretty easy, I can do this. And 3 being, this is like something I hate to do and it's so energy sucking, right? And then somewhere in between, because you're going to have some that you're like, I don't like to do, but I don't hate to do. So we would call them low, medium, and high level tasks, right? High level tasks are going to be the ones that are, a lot of work, and the low level tasks are things that are pretty easy to do. So once you've had that chance to divide those all up and look at it, then you have to decide how you're going to attack your list. Here's a little aside. Let's go back to talking about that dopamine. ADHD people work on a deficit of dopamine, right? And we're always seeking dopamine. So if you get up on a Saturday morning and the first thought that you have is that, I got to clean the house or whatever within the first, whatever. I say that a lot. Count how many times I say whatever. Um, if you wake up in the morning thinking that, though, your dopamine level is already low because we function at a deficit most of the time. Now, think about a car battery. And if it's always got a low battery, it's harder to get it to start, right? So, as opposed to a full battery or even a 3/4 of a battery, whatever, if it's too low, it's going to be really hard or almost impossible to get it started. So, we have to do something before we start working on the task to lift the dopamine. That's where a dopamine menu comes in. You need to have a list of things that give you a quick hit of dopamine. But you don't want to, for this particular strategy, you don't want to use something that is a relaxing thing, like this brings me down, it makes me feel calm. You want something that's going to give you a little boost. So maybe a quick walk will give you a dopamine hit. It could be as simple as taking some deep breaths or jumping jacks or sit-ups or wiggling your body all over the place. There's actually scientific reasons why you can wiggle your body all over the place, and it's actually kind of good for you. So pick those little things, make a list of them. You're going to want to do one of those first because you have to get your dopamine levels up to at least normal, right? And if you don't get them up to normal, you're starting at a deficit and you're trying to make yourself do something with a deficit. So what would you do to kickstart yourself? I myself find that some sort of physical activity will generally help, even if it's just walking around the house, and then I'm more able to do something. Then I recommend that you pick for your first activity, rather than picking one of the hard ones, the ones that really suck us dry, pick one of the easier ones, one that maybe you even might enjoy a little bit, because then you're also going to get a quick dopamine hit off of finishing that. And sometime later, we'll talk about how some people don't really get much of a dopamine hit from completing a task, but a lot of people do. So you might get that quick dopamine hit there. So now you're building your dopamine back up. But as you're doing these activities and chores or whatever your tasks are, you have to think about, is my dopamine level too low to make myself do this activity? And if it is, how do I raise my dopamine level to a point where I feel like I have the energy to do something? So if you watched my previous video, you know that our motivation is different than the motivation of a neurotypical person, in that we have to sometimes piggyback our unenjoyable activities with enjoyable activities. And if you didn't watch that one, you should go back and watch it, because that will also help in this whole process. Don't forget, once you've completed this list and you've done all of this work with it and played with it, you can keep it and duplicate it as much as you want to. And so therefore you have that checklist the next time you go to do your kitchen. Don't reinvent the wheel every time. So give it a try. See if it works. If you do give it a try, let me know how it works for you, and I'll see you next time.